The top 100 most impactful events of the last century. The events of the last century have shaped the world as we know it today. Wars, revolutions, technological advancements, and cultural movements have all played a part in shaping our history. From the devastation of World War II to the Cold War, from the civil rights movement to the rise of technology, the last century has been a time of great change and progress. But it has also been a time of great tragedy and loss. In this video, we will take a look at the top 100 most impactful events of the last century, and how they have shaped our world today. Join us as we journey through the past, to understand the present and shape the future. Welcome to our video on the top 100 most impactful events of the last century. We will be taking a year-by-year look at the events that have shaped our world. 1920, the Treaty of Versailles was signed, officially ending World War I and shaping the political boundaries of Europe. 1921, the Russian Revolution saw the overthrow of the Tsar and the rise of the Soviet Union. 1922, the Lincoln Memorial was dedicated in Washington, D.C., honoring the 16th President of the United States. 1923, President Harding dies in office. 1924, J. Edgar Hoover was appointed head of the FBI. 1925, the Scopes monkey trial took place, which tested the constitutionality of teaching evolution in schools. 1926, the first transatlantic telephone call was made. 1927, Charles Lindbergh completed the first solo flight across the Atlantic. 1928, the first successful television broadcast was made. 1929, the stock market crash marked the beginning of the Great Depression. 1930, Mahatma Gandhi began his civil disobedience campaign in India. 1931, Spain became a republic. 1932, Franklin D. Roosevelt was elected president. 1933, the 21st Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified, ending prohibition. 1934, the Dust Bowl began. 1935, the Social Security Act was passed, providing financial support for the elderly, disabled, and unemployed. 1936, the Berlin Olympics were held, showcasing the Nazi regime in Germany. 1937, the bombing of Guernica, Spain, occurred during the Spanish Civil War, killing hundreds of civilians. 1938, the Munich Agreement was signed, allowing Nazi Germany to annex parts of Czechoslovakia. 1939, World War II began with the invasion of Poland by Germany. 1940, the Battle of Britain saw the Royal Air Force successfully defend the United Kingdom against the German Luftwaffe. 1941, the attack on Pearl Harbor brought the United States into World War II. 1942, the Battle of Midway was a decisive victory for the United States in the Pacific theater of World War II. 1943, the Tehran Conference was held between leaders of the Allied powers, discussing strategy for the war. 1944, D-Day, the Normandy landings, marked the beginning of the liberation of Western Europe from Nazi occupation. 1945, the end of World War II and the dropping of atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki marked the first use of nuclear weapons in warfare. 1946, the Nuremberg trials were held, in which Nazi leaders were prosecuted for war crimes. 1947, the Cold War began, marked by the division of the world into two opposing spheres of influence, the Western capitalist nations and the Eastern communist nation. 1948, the Berlin blockade was imposed by the Soviet Union, cutting off access to West Berlin. 1949, the formation of NATO, North Atlantic Treaty Organization, marked the beginning of a military alliance between the Western nations. 1950, the Korean War began as North Korea invaded South Korea. 1951, the 22nd Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified, limiting presidential terms to 2. 1952, the first hydrogen bomb was tested by the United States. 1953, the Korean War ended with an armistice, but no official peace treaty was signed. 1954, the Brown v. Board of Education Supreme Court decision declared that segregation in schools was unconstitutional. 1955, the Montgomery bus boycott, sparked by the arrest of Rosa Parks, was a key event in the civil rights movement. 1956, the Suez Crisis saw the United Kingdom, France, and Israel invade Egypt after the nationalization of the Suez Canal. 1957, the launch of Sputnik, the first artificial satellite, marked the beginning of the space race. 1958, the European Economic Community was founded, which would eventually become the European Union. 1959, the Cuban Revolution led by Fidel Castro overthrew the U.S.-backed dictator Fulgencio Batista. 1960, the U-2 incident, in which a U.S. spy plane was shot down over the Soviet Union, caused tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union. 1961, the Bay of Pigs invasion, a failed attempt by the United States to overthrow the Cuban government, further strained relations with Cuba. 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the closest the world ever came to nuclear war, was resolved when the Soviet Union agreed to remove its missiles from Cuba. 1963, the March on Washington and the Civil Rights Act were key events in the civil rights movement, leading to the end of segregation in the United States. 1964, the Gulf of Tonkin Resolution authorized U.S. military action in Vietnam. 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed, banning discriminatory voting practices and increasing African American voter registration. 1966, the Black Power movement emerged, advocating for black self-determination and empowerment. 1967, the Six-Day War was fought between Israel and its neighboring countries, resulting in Israel gaining control of the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, and East Jerusalem. 1968, the Civil Rights Act of 1968 was passed, banning discrimination in housing. 1969, the Stonewall Riots, a series of demonstrations by the LGBTQ community, marked the beginning of the modern gay rights movement. 1970, the Kent State shootings saw National Guardsmen fire on students protesting the Vietnam War, killing 4. 1971, the Pentagon Papers were published, revealing previously classified information about U.S. involvement in the Vietnam War. 1972, the Watergate scandal led to the resignation of President Nixon. 1973, the Yom Kippur War was fought between Israel and a coalition of Arab states. 1974, President Nixon resigned following the Watergate scandal. 1975, the fall of Saigon marked the end of the Vietnam War. 1976, the United States bicentennial was celebrated on the 200th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. 1977, the first Star Wars movie was released, becoming a cultural phenomenon. 1978, the Camp David Accords were signed, resulting in a peace treaty between Israel and Egypt. 1979, the Iran hostage crisis saw 52 American embassy employees held captive for 444 days. 1980, Ronald Reagan was elected President of the United States. 1981, President Reagan was the target of an assassination attempt. 1982, the Falklands War was fought between Argentina and the United Kingdom over control of the Falkland Islands. 1983, the United States invaded Grenada in response to a leftist coup. 1984, the Indian Union Carbide disaster, a gas leak that killed thousands in Bhopal, India, was one of the worst industrial accidents in history. 1985, the Live Aid concert raised millions of dollars for famine relief in Ethiopia. 1986, the Challenger space shuttle disaster occurred when the shuttle broke apart after launch. 1987, the Iran-Contra affair was a political scandal in which senior members of the Reagan administration were found to have sold arms to Iran in exchange for hostages, and used the proceeds to fund anti-Sandinista rebels in Nicaragua. 1988, the Pan Am Flight 103 bombing over Lockerbie, Scotland, killed 270 people. 1989, the fall of the Berlin Wall marked the end of the Cold War and the beginning of the reunification of Germany. 1990, the Persian Gulf War was fought between Iraq and a coalition of countries led by the United States, resulting in Iraq's defeat. 1991, the collapse of the Soviet Union marked the end of the Cold War. 1992, the Rodney King riots occurred in Los Angeles after the acquittal of police officers in the beating of Rodney King. 1993, the World Trade Center bombing killed 6 people and injured thousands. 1994, the Rwandan genocide resulted in the deaths of 800,000 Tutsi and moderate Hutu. 1995, the Oklahoma City bombing killed 168 people and injured hundreds. 1996, the Atlanta Olympics bombing killed 1 person and injured 111. 1997, the handover of Hong Kong from the United Kingdom to China marked the end of British colonial rule. 1998, the Clinton-Lewinsky scandal led to the impeachment of President Clinton. 1999, the Columbine High School shooting killed 13 people and injured 24. 2000, the U.S. presidential election between George W. Bush and Al Gore was decided by the Supreme Court. 2001, the 9/11 attacks resulted in the deaths of nearly 3,000 people and led to the United States' involvement in the War on Terror. 2002, the Enron scandal resulted in the bankruptcy of the energy company and convictions of its top executives. 2003, the United States invaded Iraq, leading to the overthrow of Saddam Hussein's regime. 2004, the Madrid train bombings killed 191 people and injured more than 2,000. 2005, the Hurricane Katrina disaster resulted in the deaths of more than 1,800 people and caused widespread damage to the Gulf Coast. 2006, the Lebanon War was fought between Israel and Hezbollah. 2007, the financial crisis led to the Great Recession and a global economic downturn. 2008, the election of Barack Obama as the first African American president of the United States. 2009, the H1N1 influenza outbreak resulted in the deaths of thousands of people worldwide. 2010, the Deepwater Horizon oil spill killed 11 people and caused widespread environmental damage. 2011, the Arab Spring saw a wave of protests and uprisings across the Middle East and North Africa. 2012, the Benghazi attack resulted in the deaths of 4 Americans, including Ambassador Chris Stevens. 2013, the Boston Marathon bombing killed 3 people and injured over 260. 2014, the rise of ISIS led to increased violence and instability in the Middle East. 2015, the Syrian refugee crisis resulted in millions of people fleeing the country due to civil war. 2016, the Brexit vote saw the United Kingdom vote to leave the European Union. 2017, the inauguration of President Donald Trump. 2018, the North Korea summit between President Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un took place. 2019, the impeachment of President Trump. 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic has led to widespread illness and death, and has had a major impact on the global economy. These are some examples of the most important events that have occurred in the last century, from 1920 to 2020. Please let me know if you have any other requests or if you need more information about any of these events. Thank you for watching.